I'm wasting my young years. It doesn't matter. Alright, first things first, I'm the realist. Second things second, I need to let everybody know that I've done a video for my main channel. I'm now happy to report that my main channel does show up when I Google my name. I feel very vindicated about the fact that I'm like I've started my new channel. The main thing I'm into about it, and this is the principal thing, is that like I'm at a point now where I'm quite consistently getting more views on the videos I upload than I have subscribers. Oh, I screw it up every single time. New, which is good. I really enjoy that because I don't know. I don't really like the opposite to that. When however many subscribers you've got, you know, people don't watch. But I think it's because the video is good quality. You know, like I like being in a situation because with the videos on this channel, when they were like really long, I'm not surprised that a lot of people didn't actually watch them. Whereas I feel like with this, I can genuinely be like, "Hey guys, zero excuses. The video is only 4 minutes, so check it out." Hello, Formal Day Hido 6201. We're probably going to jump into the video pretty soon, because why not? I ate a bit too much for dinner. I feel kind of bad because of that. All right. Hey Bez. One sec. Mumsnet. Is this about Kistama? Yeah. So Keir Starmer got interviewed by Mumsnet, and he said some stuff. Honestly, I feel like who cares what Keir Starmer says? If I was in charge of a political show, I would like interview all of like the major like party leaders, and then Keir Starmer would show up, and I'd be like, all right, bye. Just because like who cares? He's such a spineless little boy. So what does it matter what he says? He's just gonna say whatever he wants to say, whatever he has to say to advance his own. I know, okay, like I know it's like that's most politicians, but it just offends me more. Keir Starmer. Anyway, so yeah, he basically said something to the effect of, basically, children shouldn't be able to just consent to stuff and then override like their parents' wishes, which is a reasonable point to make. But obviously, some people got offended by it. Whatever. I mean, the thing is, like, it's not clear either way or the other. Like the way I look at it, I would say it seems so obvious that something in the middle is appropriate. Like, children shouldn't have complete control over their own lives, and not be in any way subject to their parents. But also, they should have some control over their lives and not be entirely subject to their parents. It just seems like so obvious. But yeah, people are bothered by it. Anyway, all right, let's start watching the thing. Okay, is it gonna actually wait? I don't even want it to do that anyway because I want to full screen it. Not to suggest though. Oh, all right. So I'll just remind you where we were. We were kind of like looking at. So basically, Tom is the guy we're responding to. Was criticizing people for like Labour people for not doing a good job at answering the question, "What is a woman?" So interesting. Hello, Useless Strawberry. Lovely. So who hasn't been here for a while? Lisa Michelle. Not that I'm upset or anything. I really, really like that song by London Grammar. I'm wasting my young years.
Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
God, it was going so well, Rachel. From here on out, over the next 6 months, there was a 50-50 chance that any appearance by a Labour politician on TV or the radio would, sooner or later, end in them being asked some question about gender and genitalia.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix, David?
But trans women are women, from your perspective. Is that right?
Are you comfortable defining what a woman is?
So a woman can have a penis?
Do I think that women were born with penises? Yes. Do you agree with her?
Now, Labour Party politicians weren't the only ones being pressed to declare their interpretation of the meaning of womanhood. As we'll see towards the end of this video, in the period
Hey D Asuero. Someone commented before how every single face I pause on looks really in pain.
since the Conservative Party has increasingly sought to turn trans rights into a wedge issue. The reason that Labour MPs have had to field these questions so much more than politicians from other parties is that their responses have consistently been absolute car crashes. The mere mention of trans people seems to cause senior Labour Party...
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, though, like, I kind of wonder, like, if you ask the average conservative person, I mean, conservative people don't usually give good responses to this. And if they do, like, one of the problems of this question, I say problems, I mean problems for politicians, which is a good thing for everybody else, is that it kind of requires politicians to really put their flag in the sand. Because if somebody says, can women have penises? Then there's only two answers you can give to that. Either yes or no. And if you say yes, then that sounds stupid to a lot of people. If you say no, then you're basically saying the entire idea of trans identity is nonsense. And unsurprisingly, even people in the Conservative Party aren't very comfortable putting their flag in the ground and saying trans identity is nonsense. You know, for example, Rishi Sunak, our current Prime Minister, when he was asked about whether women can have penises or some kind of question along those lines, he gave a bit of a non-committal answer. So the kind of funny thing is, it's not as if Labour the only politicians giving stupid answers to that question. Yes, the reason they're being asked is that they keep failing on one occasion for the media. Yeah, that's definitely it. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny because it's like, I actually think that they could, it would be worth them asking the question of conservatives. Because if they asked that question of conservatives, would the entire Conservative Party be out there saying that trans identity is nonsense? Or would the Conservative Party be also saying that some women can have penises? Because it has to be one or the other. Either trans identity is nonsense, or women can have penises. So yeah, I do find it kind of, you know, it's not really about promoting transphobia, I guess, there. It's more about, you know, like Labour being treated, like Labour being subject to questions that the Conservatives aren't, which is fun.
Party figures to turn into whimpering little messes. These presenters all probably feel as though they're doing an excellent job here. And by the metrics that really matter in contemporary journalism, they are. These exchanges make for great social media content and tend to get a decent amount of clicks.
Well, look, the other metric is, are you challenging authority? Like that's the other metric for how well you're succeeding in journalism. So this is being like, oh, you know, it's just because, you know, they get more views and blah, 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 which is, of course, a very cynical approach to take to journalism. But by the other approach, you would say, well, what should journalism be? It should be about challenging authority and speaking truth to power and all that kind of stuff. But if you found a question that people in authority are unable to answer, then surely that's what journalists should be pushing them on, right? Like, that would seem, so it seems like whether you're talking about it cynically in terms of, oh, it's about getting views, or you're talking about it in terms of actually the more noble goal of bringing politicians to account, either way, asking them a question that they're unable to answer would seem very legitimate. That's a good point. Yeah, ask them what trans is. Yeah. I think that would be a better question. Like, what does it mean for somebody to be trans?
Far more, at least, than videos of politicians talking about taxes or whatever else. But
yeah, okay, that's a fair point. So basically, I feel like what's kind of being touched on there is that yeah, this is definitely like an issue where like it allows people to have a more intuitive sense politically of whether or not the answer being given is appropriate. You know, if somebody says, you know, a question about tax or whatever, then a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, I don't really know. Like, whereas if someone's asked what a woman is, most people feel they know what a woman is. So if they hear somebody not being able to answer that question, interesting.
that aside, in these interviews, even the most right-wing of these presenters will no doubt comfort themselves that they've not sought to push an agenda at all here, but have merely been asking questions. This facade of just asking questions often allows journalists to convince themselves as much as their viewers that they are of a completely different breed to motivated conspiracists like Matt Walsh. They're not screaming in the faces of a school board accusing them of child abuse, but talking calmly and politely in the studio.
I really don't know, like, I didn't get the impression, like, you know, so we're going back to the kind of attack on Matt Walsh. I really don't feel like Matt Walsh was screaming and angry and things like that. But, I mean, the reality is that, of course, journalists are supposed to be impartial. And to some extent, journalists have to ask questions, even if they think they're dumb because they're the questions being asked. The only real experience I had, well, you know, I've had some. Basically, I've had to ask people about when I was doing my journalism degree, I had to do journalism, and I think I kind of just realized, yeah, I've just got to ask, like you. Basically, it's your job to push the mainstream media narrative because that's kind of what journalism is. It's just like what other people are asking is what you're supposed to ask. So if you talk to somebody from Labour in 2019, which is when I was doing most of my master's in journalism, you've got to ask them, how about that anti-Semitism, eh? Lots of anti-Semitism in Labour. And it's like, even if you think the whole thing's a made-up scam just designed to, you know, slander Jeremy Corbyn, you're just supposed to ask it because it's like, what's there? That's my experience with journalism. It's worth doing, by the way. If you actually speak to journalists, or I say that, people who I guess have academic experience with journalism, which is to say, the people at my uni, when I was speaking to people, I did realize a lot of them are genuinely very, very boring people who have become entirely incapable of expressing their own opinion. Like, I've asked some, no, okay, that's not really true. Like, when you, like, you know, they have their own opinions, but they're very quick and easily can go into journalism mode where they become completely devoid of opinions. It's kind of incredible. But yeah, I've noticed that. I noticed that when I was doing my, you know, journalism thing. So the point I'm making is just like that's how entrenched the idea is in my experience of journalism. Of you just turn into an impartial robot, and your only job is just to not have any opinions. Oh, that's a noise, and repeat whatever is the standard question you might be expected to ask, which is fun. You know, it's fun. But yeah, the thing about it is like, I mean, that's what a journalist does. Like, I don't know, it kind of seems weird because it's sort of like, it's kind of like the attitude of people who think like defense lawyers are bad people. And it's like, defense lawyers aren't bad people. They're like vital for society to work. And even if what they have to do is do everything they possibly can to defend people who might well be guilty of horrible crimes, that's their job. And they should honestly be proud of the fact that's what they're doing because they need to do that job for society to exist, or to exist fairly. Like if we instead had a system where like every single lawyer had to be completely morally principled, you would have a situation where people who were guilty of crimes couldn't expect any real defense. And that would be terrible. So, you know, people say that. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing with journalism. Like, essentially, the job of journalists is to serve as a kind of neutral, impartial platform to just throw ideas off. And the way, of course, a journalist is able to tell, well, what question should I be asking, is looking at what kind of questions are being asked. So yeah, I don't see like it's not as if like journalists are like saying, oh, journalists must secretly actually want to ask about this question because of their evil ulterior motives, is like suggesting that defense lawyers actually secretly think that murderers should be murder should be legal or something like that. Yeah, the whole thing about Matt Walsh being a conspiracy theorist is ridiculous.
Of a respected news organisation. And yet, Walsh spends a good hour of his film warming up to that big finale. For the entire opening third of What is a Woman, his approach is practically identical to that of these mainstream British news presenters. And this got me thinking, maybe there's an...
Thinking. The faces. Yeah, thinking. That's fun. Good job. Don't strain yourself.
Opportunity here. Even if we acknowledge that there are some important differences between What is a Woman and these interviews in the British media, maybe the abundant similarities have a lot to teach us about what's really going on in these discussions about gender and trans rights in the UK press.
You know, by the way, so like, I'm thinking this might be the first thing I do where I, react to it and then I do a scripted kind of thing, since the Kaylin Conrad video, I guess. And I don't really know. It's going to be very short, I think, because there really isn't much to say here.
Now, some of you might be thinking that it's a bit strange to have gotten this far through a video about journalists obsessing over the definition of the word woman without having provided some kind of answer to that question.
A very serious lack of self-awareness here about every wannabe left tuber in the world. No, we're fully aware that you love to talk complete guff for 30 minutes seems to be reliable, like a reliable kind of number or reliable time frame before saying anything important. That is famously what these people like to do.
Surely by now there should have been a section in which I crack the spine on some dusty old copy of the Oxford English Dictionary and take you through some etymology or something. Which, if I did, would reveal that the word derives from the Old English term wifman, or wife person, which seems a little bit problematic. The fact of the matter is, however, that none of the...
Okay, just so we're clear, irrelevant, irrelevant.
interviewers in any of the conversations we've looked at in this video are remotely interested in the definition of womanhood. Let me explain. See, if you sit down to watch What is a Woman, you will very quickly notice that its style is pretty derivative. As I mentioned earlier, it outright pinches gags from John Oliver and also takes some cues from Michael Moore and from The Daily Show. The cultural reference that kept leaping into my mind as I was watching the film, however, was this guy.
My name is Borat. I like you.
As a reminder, in this first act of What is a Woman, Matt Walsh almost exclusively interviews healthcare professionals and one academic who are trans-affirming in their
Okay, this reminds me of a thing where so JXE, a YouTuber, he used to be called Sins, and he would basically respond to CinemaSins videos, and because a lot of CinemaSins are incredibly lazy and stupid and basically just in-jokes, the logical consequence of that is anybody responding to a CinemaSins video is going to end up developing similar in-jokes themselves. And one of them was that CinemaSins would often point out two similarities between one similarity between two movies, and then give that a sin. And JXE, aka Sins at the time, would be like, this movie had blah blah blah, and that movie had blah blah blah, and that's a sin. And it got so derivative, or like so kind of repetitive rather, and happened every single time, that eventually JXE would just be like, this movie, that movie, and like that became like whenever CinemaSins like was like, well, I don't know, like, hey, a Gandalf's here. Shouldn't he be at Hogwarts? I don't know. I couldn't think of it, but you know, like I can't remember a specific example. But yeah, then JX would be like, this movie, that movie, because yeah, and that's kind of how I feel here. Like I don't know why. Like I'm not sure how substantial it's going to be, but all of like, I'm not as much of an expert about all of kind of like the things being mentioned, but it seems kind of dumb. Like basically, it kind of seems like what Tom Nicholas is saying here is Matt Walsh's documentary feels a little bit like a mockumentary because it's kind of a little bit silly. Like that seems to basically be the point that Tom is making. But I'm kind of like, well, so what? Like mockumentaries exist. Like I'm genuinely kind of, and again, you know, I'm not like an expert or anything like that on these media franchises. But when he says like, oh, it's like the Daily Show, I'm like, yeah, I can imagine the Daily Show have probably done segments where they've like interviewed people with the intention of making them look stupid. Is that the similarity? I don't know. So yeah, I'm just kind of thinking in my head like this movie, that movie. This movie used used interviews for comedic purposes. That movie used documentaries for comedic purposes, and that's a sin.
Practices.
Yes, I am aware of the irony. So since Loris has said that they love JXE, I should say, of course, I'm aware that JXE is a trans-identified individual, and you know, I mean that's fine because it's irrelevant to the quality of their content. So yeah, fine.
Take the film on face value. This is supposed to be Walsh giving supporters of trans rights an opportunity.
Oh, I suppose actually I could point out, sorry, I'm fiddling something. I could point out the hilarious irony of anybody who, like any bread tuber, left tuber, whatever you want to call them, calling anything derivative. Like isn't YouTube just like YouTube is inherently pretty cannibalistic, right? I don't know. I would say so. On a recent video on my main channel, somebody said describing me as a discount Matt Walsh, and I was kind of like, but how? Like, am I really that similar to Matt Walsh? I don't think I am. I don't really think. Like, I don't think in terms of the way we present ourselves, the way we argue. I just don't think we're that similar. Now, I don't know, to be fair. You know, I don't have an objective, like, in my head, I'm like, I'm a unique little snowflake and I'm not like anybody. Maybe from somebody's outside perspective, they're like, oh, no, you are. But I kind of feel like they were just like, oh, you're Matt Walsh because you're criticizing trans stuff and that makes you Matt Walsh. That kind of seemed like where they were coming from. I'm not sure, though. But yeah, I mean, the reality is, though, that YouTube is, to some extent, pretty damn cannibalistic. Everybody's copying everybody else, aping everybody else, stealing everyone else's shtick. And that's kind of okay. But it's very ironic for, frankly, any YouTuber to be like, I can't believe that Matt Walsh's documentary is somewhat reminiscent of some other stuff, some other media.
Opportunity to explain their understanding of sex and gender. Throughout, however, it's evident that Walsh is playing something of a character. Of course, I don't doubt that Matt Walsh is a pretty intellectually incurious guy, but he's obviously hamming it up a bit. I mean, with a very slightly different framing, this could all be a very, very good parody of the exact genre of confused by modern life bloke that Matt Walsh is.
I don't really understand saying somebody's intellectually incurious when the whole thing is running around interviewing academics, but satire has a point and that's why it's funny. Yeah.
Being a dad is one of the great privileges of my life.
Yeah, okay, so I will say this, here's the thing. Playing dumb is a move I respect. Again, I wouldn't even say, so that is something I do a lot, especially on Twitter. But even then, I wouldn't say like, so you might be like, well, does that mean you are like Matt Walsh? We do have, I guess, similar glasses now I think about it, actually, don't we? Wow. Now I'm looking that way. So I gotta just do his face. And I'll like get my, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so yeah, basically like playing dumb. But yeah, even then, I don't think it's like, oh, well, that's similar, because I think it's something which a lot of people do because it's very fun. And I also think it is actually a good strategy to get people to argue better. Because the thing is, so like, for example, I got into an argument with a bunch of climate change deniers, and basically, rather than, and the other thing I'm very resistant to, and I mentioned this before, is overextending myself. Like, I don't want to suddenly find myself defending an argument I'm not quite sure I can defend. And the easiest way to do that is to basically try and be the dumbest person you can, so that you don't like go out of your depth. Like, if you try and like act about 50% dumber than you are, then you're always in your depth. It's very comfy. If you try and act like 50% smarter than you are, then you're going to have an issue. But like a lot of the time, somebody will be like, or okay, like something I got when I was like talking to these climate change deniers is they kept saying like, they want to destroy the economy. They want everyone to eat bugs. They want blah, blah. And I just kept going like, who's they? Who is they? Where is this they? That was like a common thing I said. And like also other things, like people would like mention, like they'd be like, oh, so you want everyone to just use lithium batteries that were mined by African child slaves? And I'd be like, who mentioned lithium batteries? What are they? Where do they come from? Just because like I didn't. So I feel like it's often a good thing to do when like somebody, I guess I'm thinking of that Jordan Peterson interview, which I never actually watched, with Kathy Newman, but I know it like introduced the famous like meme of like, so you're saying blah 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 blah. I feel like if someone does that, then a good strategy is to play dumb. It's like someone says, so you're saying that you want everybody to just live in the trees and smoke. I don't know. Sorry, I was gonna like smoke weed. I don't know. I was trying to like invent like some kind of like hypothetical primitivism. And then I'd be like, what are trees? No, it's not true. I wouldn't be like that. But I'm like, when did I say that? Who said that? Where was that said? Who even has argued that? Blah blah blah. But the thing is, so it's a fun thing to do, but it's also actually, I think, a very viable strategy to tease out, if you like, good arguments, because then the person is going to actually have to be like, okay, let me just respond to what this person has actually said, and it's also good because it's kind of like if it forces somebody to actually really make sure what they're saying makes sense, and it also forces people to be honest. For example, I'm still not quite sure who they is. I assume the argument isn't that the climate agenda is being controlled by one singular non-binary person, but rather there is some collective mass of people who are like, in charge of the economy and things like that. And one might imagine that in doing that, you could force somebody to admit or bring out some, from somebody, some kind of anti-Semitic ideas they might hold to. In which case, by getting them to say that, you've at least gone some way towards exposing them. So I think sometimes like playing dumb can be like a good tactic against dog whistles. Also, actually, the other funny example I can think of is like when somebody makes like a misogynistic joke, and then you say like, why is that funny? Oh, what's the joke? Yeah, but why is that funny though? And then you basically force them to admit that the basic joke is like, lol, women are dumb. Like, that's like a good thing to do. It's like, yeah, but why is that funny? Why do you think what's the joke though? And they'd be like, yeah, oh, it's just a joke. Yeah, but what's the joke? Why is it funny? Like, oh, because I'm remembering in Family Guy when Peter's like, why do women have boobs? So you got someone to look at while you're talking to them. So yeah, imagine, yeah, and then like, why is that funny, Peter? Hey Lois, it's just funny. Anyway, But yeah, the point is, like, I feel like Tom Nicholas is basically being like, oh, Matt Walsh plays dumb, as if like that's a bad thing. And what I'm saying is playing dumb is something I entirely endorse. I think playing dumb is a good strategy for many reasons. And it's a pretty good strategy, especially if you're trying to make something that is informative. Yeah, it's a very good strategy if you want to make something informative. Because the dumber you are, it's why like Brian Cox was on Joe Rogan. I think he's been on Joe Rogan several times. I'm not a huge fan of Joe Rogan, but I think there are some people who I really enjoy his conversations with, and Brian Cox is one of those people. You know, the what's he called? Hey Lois, the physicist. And what I like about it is Joe Rogan is so kind of unabashedly dumb that it actually makes it more interesting because he asks like questions which, you know, and it basically forces Brian Cox to kind of dumb down his language to make it more accessible to other people. Someone's saying, okay, so apparently people are saying Louis Theroux plays dumb, which I could also imagine. Yeah, I feel like that probably works well. But yeah, anyway. Although I will say, I feel like Brian Cox, he is, I don't, you know, I was gonna say smart. Like I think the better term for it is informed. He like knows so much about astrophysics that I think sometimes like Joe Rogan's dumbness was like so incomprehensible to Brian Cox that Brian Cox couldn't like okay, because here's the thing. At one point, Brian Cox said that the universe is flat, and Joe Rogan was like, "What the hell does that mean? How can the universe be flat?" Blah blah blah, and like Brian Cox, as far as I remember, doesn't actually give like an answer that really makes sense, and I still don't really understand. But I suspect the reason for that is because he probably knows like the all the astrophysics mumbo jumbo about how actually in the quantum state of indeterminacy, I don't know, whatever, the universe is flat or whatever else. So like, yeah, when he says it, it like, you know, I don't think it works. But the point is that generally speaking, I think like being dumb, it allows people to explain things. It also works in terms of like not assuming what your audience knows. Like, I don't know, if I'm talking to somebody and they're like, I'm reminded of in The Simpsons when Sideshow Bob's brother, Cecil, is like, you're just mad because I've finally achieved my calling. And then Sideshow Bob's like, Cecil, no civilization in human history has ever considered chief hydrological engineer to be a calling. And then Cecil's like, and gives like a knowing look. And then Bob's like, yes, the Cappadocian's fine. And what I'm saying is, that's an example of where, so like I'm imagining a situation where, you know, like Bob's an interviewer and Cecil's like the expert. And he's like, and then if you're the audience there, you're just like, what the hell are the Cappadocians? So what you would need, therefore, is Homer to be doing the interview. Because if Homer was doing the interview, he'd be like, what the hell are the Cappadocians? And then you would find out. Sounds like a mountain range. I actually need to get some water. And I'll be back. Entertain yourselves. Guess who's back? Tell some men. Hey, maybe we should do a like. Everybody, get ready to like Three, two, one. Like Spike. That was fun.
Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs.
Yeah, I also hate my kids. Maybe this is simply some good, old-fashioned, self-depreciating humour. Even a humorless loser like me occasionally enjoys a bit of self-ridicule. But the more I watched of What Is a Woman, the more it became evident that Matt Walsh, being a little bit intellectually challenged, is actually pretty essential for the film to work. See, as we discussed earlier, the idea that Walsh is out on some genuine fact-finding mission is a complete facade. The real premise of this first portion of the film is the left is crazy and no one is able to say what a woman is anymore. The problem for Walsh and the production team...
See, he's acting as if there's a contradiction between those two things, but there isn't. Like, there isn't a contradiction between I'm trying to find out information and also the left is crazy and no one knows what a woman is.
Is that many of his interviewees actually do provide fairly decent answers to that question.
Yeah, like it's definitely not like serious, like, all my kid needs is a BB gun. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a good example of that. Like a similar joke. I don't know if I have seen a similar joke.
Take Marcy Bauer's response, for instance.
In this video, Tom Nicholas doesn't understand framing devices.
A woman is it's a combination of your physical attributes and then what you're showing to the world and the gender clues that you give. And hopefully those match your gender identity.
Now, not everyone will agree with this definition, but for the film to work, Walsh can't just disagree with the definition that someone provides. That definition needs to be absolutely nonsensical. Whenever he's given any answer to his question which accepts that gender might be a tiny bit more complicated than just woman equals vagina, then Walsh has to act like a complete simpleton, as though his brain just can't compute anything beyond a very basic level of reasoning. The most ridiculous example of this happens...
I like how this is like... I thought we were going to get a specific example. Well, we are going to get... I thought we were going to get an example regarding that, but like this seems very... It's very cringe to be like you actually mentioned that, like it literally, it's like, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty, like that kind of stuff. It's like he just can't understand the higher level of reasoning. It's like, okay, that's pretty lame. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's definitely true that Tom Nicholas, certainly at least as much as Matt Walsh, has not gone into this video as a serious, disinterested fact finder. And like, that's fine. But like, why is he critical of Matt Walsh for that?
Slightly later in the film, after Walsh asks gender studies professor Patrick Grzanka to help him understand the difference between sex and gender. This starts off normal enough.
What we tend to think about in the social sciences today is that sex refers to a set of biological characteristics and gender is a social construct or category.
But then a piece of classical music starts to fade in, and the film begins to skip parts of Grzanka's answer, as if to imply that it's really long and pretentious. Which has the secondary effect of making it look like Walsh's brain just melts the instant that he hears a word longer than 2 syllables. You think you can explain things to me? Well, checkmate, leftists, because I'm an idiot.
Well, like, I mean, if it is a really long explanation, then it's pretty legitimate to, again, pretty legitimate to, you know, like, do that thing of like, oh, look, he's taking ages. I don't know, it's fine. Like, it doesn't make you an idiot. It's like someone... look, at the end of the day, I mean, I want to stress, like, things can be complicated and it can take ages to explain. And, you know, it is kind of a dick move to be like, oh, it took ages to explain, aren't they stupid? But, like, at the same time, it is definitely true that, like, if someone's making a really long explanation in it, like, apart from that, like, if it's in a documentary as well, you know, you're going to have to kind of cut it down.
At the end of the day, there is no answer that...
So, like, what I'm kind of disappointed by here is that there's no... Because I was thinking it was going to be like, Matt Walsh says something that shows that he is stupid, you know, like, or you know, shows him playing dumb with the questions he's asking. But it doesn't. It's just like, so the example of Matt Walsh playing dumb is just that in post production, they edited it so this incredibly long explanation is made to feel incredibly long because it was incredibly long, which is fine. I don't know. Like, again, at the end of the day, like, I'm not gonna say, like, you know, I mean, it's kind of, it's a shame in a way because, like, you know, like, I'm not saying it's impossible that people can have complicated questions. So, like, there are complicated questions somebody could ask me that could provoke me to then give a complicated answer. And, you know, then maybe somebody could cut it. So it's like, oh, look at him giving this long, complicated answer. That's, oh, he's what a rambler or whatever. And that would annoy me. But then the thing is, like, I would think it was worse if I was confident that there could be given an answer. Like, if I, okay, I was going to say if I thought there was an answer that could be given that would make sense. To be fair, I mean, like, defining gender is fine. Like, you know, like, I think it's possible to define gender. I would actually define gender really simply. I would say it's the roles and expectations placed upon men and women. I feel like that's a pretty good definition, right? Right? I feel like that seems pretty easy.
Any of Walsh's trans-affirming interviewees could give that would suffice. Because, as with Borat, the goal here isn't to genuinely interrogate these interviewees' expertise, but to simply ask them question after question until they say something that sounds a bit silly. And that's before we even get into the fact that...
Yeah, hold on a minute. But the main question he was asking was, what is a woman? That seems to have been like the central question. And you haven't shown any example of him like asking question after question. Tom Nicholas keeps not like, and the thing is, I'm here like, okay, I haven't actually seen the Matt Walsh documentary, but he, like, Tom should be able to evidence his claims. So, like, if it is true that Matt Walsh was like constantly asking people questions to try and draw out some kind of stupid answer, where's the evidence of that? If it is true that he was intentionally playing dumb with like the questions he asked and the way he served as an interlocutor in these interviews, where's the evidence of that?
That, like those in Borat, all of these interviews were secured under false pretenses. There's more than an element of this in the exchanges that we've been looking at from the British media too. In one interview, we even see a repeat of this pantomime of acting as though any definition of womanhood which acknowledges that cervixes might not be everything.
You know what, while we're at it, actually, I have a criticism of Borat. I watched the second one, and I was kind of like, I felt like some of the time, maybe not a lot of the time, but at least one time I can think of, it was a situation where like, I was just like, you're putting people in very weird situations and then you're just documenting like their weird reactions, but like it's not making a political point, which is weird because I've also heard people say like Borat 2 has like makes more of a political point. But okay, so like here's an example I can think of. Okay, there's a bit where like Borat like goes to get like his daughter like goes to get makeup done or something, or like a hairdresser or something, and he says like, what would you do for a racist family? And then the woman's like, I wouldn't go darker than this shade, or something like that. And it's like, okay, it's a weird response, but it's kind of a weird response to a weird question, and therefore I don't really view it as making a point. Like obviously there are times where it's really funny, like when he is interviewing that guy at the rodeo, and he's like, oh, like they're talking about like gay people. He's like, oh, in my country, we take them out and hang them. And then the guy's like, yeah, that's what we're trying to get done here. And that's funny because like that guy like clearly genuinely believes that. But like, I don't really think that that woman has a sincere opinion on what the appropriate makeup would be for a racist family. Like, I don't think. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, I'm not above laughing at this silly old humor, but didn't seem very politically relevant. Hello, Lisa Michelle. Nice to meet you. I noted your absence from the past few live streams. The new queen, now that the competition is dead, Lizzie II.
Thing is treated as though it's beyond.
I keep missing the streams. Oh, I've stopped doing them as recently as frequently recently is what I meant to say. Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, it all works out because like it's because I've been doing things on my main channel. So I think pretty much like I've been consistently doing them like I guess Tuesday and Friday. I think that's when I've been doing them. But yeah, there was a time when I was doing like 4 or 5 days a week. Now feel like the maximum I do them is 3 days a week. Just because I don't know, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. It's fine that I'm doing them not so regularly. But I think yeah, it's been Tuesday and Friday quite consistently. So yeah.
On the limits of human comprehension.
I think it's because a lot of people listening would say, well, I know what a woman is. It's really straightforward. And then it feels that politicians start to get themselves into rabbit holes about this.
The added awfulness here is that Werewolf
Wait,
at least
I
has
missed
the
the
decency,
context.
acting as though any definition of womanhood interviews were secured under false pretenses.
You gotta listen to this again because I wasn't paying attention.
There's more than an element of.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, we've had daylight savings time recently. So, well, I say recently. Last weekend we went backwards an hour. So, ordinarily it would be I mean, you are right actually, around 4 p.m. Eastern or so. Yes, everybody smash that like button. Get your fingers over that like button. And 3, 2, 1, like spike. I'll tell you in a second about the Brit guy with the radio microphone they showed in the vid because I think I might recognize him. But yeah, anyway. But yeah. So when y'all in America have y'all's your clocks change, I mean, obviously, I guess it's an obvious point. Just bear in mind that your clocks will change and our clocks already have changed. There you go.
This in the exchanges that we've been looking.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, the like preppers, yeah, I guess it's a good term for them. Yeah, they just accept somebody into their house. That's a real non-Suella Braverman moment. Yeah, I was watching a thing recently on Have I Got News for You, where they were talking to Nigel Farage about like the racists in UKIP, and the like the guy was like talking. Well, I don't know if it counts as racism if it's against Eastern Europeans. They're kind of the same race. But he was talking about Romanians, and he was like, "Oh, they'll stab you as soon as look at you." And then Ian Hislop was like, "Nice guy, buys his rounds, or buys his round." And I thought, yeah, that's really funny. Like that idea, and I feel like that's the thing in which does exist, like the idea of like somebody who has like bad political views, but then they're like a nice person personally. But yeah, it is funny. All right, yeah, okay, we got to power through this. Okay.
Looking at from the British media too. In one interview, we even see a repeat of this pantomime of acting as though any definition of womanhood which acknowledges that cervixes might not be everything is treated as though it's beyond the limits of human comprehension.
I think it's because a lot of people listening would say, well, I know what a woman is. It's really straightforward.
I don't know who that person is. So I'm sorry for the person who asked who this person is, but I don't recognize them.
And then it feels that politicians start to get themselves into rabbit holes about this.
The added awfulness here is that...
Well, hold a minute. So all he was saying there, he didn't mention cervixes. He just said, I think a lot of people would say the definition's simple, and yet politicians can't give a good answer.
Well, Walsh at least has the decency to play
My aunt has a hysterectomy. Is she still a woman? Yeah.
the idiot himself. The UK equivalent typically involves affluent, privately educated nepotism babies like Stig Abel here.
Oh, Stig Abel. He looks like the guy who was in No Country for Paddy Considine. I was about to say No Country for Old Men. I meant to say Dead Man's Shoes. Is his name Paddy Considine? He's also in that new HBO thing.
Suggesting that it's their audience who is too thick to understand what's going on. Way to pay back
Wait, what?
the fans, Stig.
How's he doing that? If anything, it's the opposite. He said most of the audience knows the answer to this question, and yet politicians don't seem to be able to give an answer. Tom just makes up, he just makes stuff up. It's just like, it reminds me of, I was talking about, on Twitter, the Katie Montgomery reality filter, where just, these completely innocuous statements suddenly turn into, they want to wipe us all out, or whatever. And in this case, it's the statement, most average members of the public think the question of who is a woman is quite simple, and yet politicians seem to be unable to answer it, becomes the average person is too stupid to understand what's going on. Considine, yeah. Yeah, Dead Man's Shoes is a good film. You should watch it if you haven't. If you haven't watched Dead Man's Shoes, check it out. It's about a guy who returns back from Iraq only to find out that his mentally challenged brother was tortured and killed by a group of drug dealers, a criminal gang. So he sets out on a quest of revenge. The only thing I really remember from it, because I reference it quite a lot, is there's a bit where they're doing coke and somebody snorts something and they're like, that's fucking Parmesan cheese, mate. And yeah, sometimes I'll I can't really think if I'm making a pasta or something and I'm getting some Parmesan cheese, as I might indeed, because it's quite a common, being an Italian cheese, quite common with pasta, and I'll internally and sometimes externally say to myself, that's fucking Parmesan cheese, mate. There we go.
Crucially, even when politicians
Pecorino Romano, my favorite is Asda Savers hard cheese. Asda Savers Italian style hard cheese.
have leaned towards the kinds of trans-exclusionary responses that it...
I always reference the Onio guy? Onio. Is that like a O-N-I-O? O-N... Onion. Oh, yeah, the onion. Oh, yeah. We're gonna chop an onion. He said it like that. Yeah, okay, I know, yeah. I feel like there are a few other things I think about. Oh, okay. Here's another one. When, sometimes, so obviously I say, occasionally. I've been known in my time to say, but sometimes, just because, I come into it a bit weird, I'll accidentally say, instead. And whenever I do that, I remember this video of this kid at a Minecraft conference. So there's this kid, a tiny little chubby kid at a Minecraft conference, and he goes, I was wondering, what's the recommended WAM to one Minecraft 4? No, sorry, what did I say? I don't know why I said Minecraft 4. Why was 4 in my head? I don't know, anyway. I think the 4 was just totally made up. I don't know why I was thinking. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, but yeah. So he says, "What's the recommended WAM to one Minecraft?" Sorry, yeah, that's it. Yeah, sorry, yeah, yes. Thank you, Kai. Oh, you're getting it. Yeah, I forgot about that. Dedicated. See, yeah. Here I am being like, oh, let me tell you this thing I reference all the time, and then I forget one of the most iconic things from it. Yeah. So he says I was wondering, what's the dedicated wham? Or what's the recommended dedicated wham? Something like that. To one Minecraft or something like that. Dedicated wham. Anyway, yeah, I think about that whenever I say um, I was wondering. Oh, another painful face. Another painful face from Tom Painful Face Nicholas.
It seems that these journalists are looking for, that hasn't been enough either. After being asked several times for her definition of woman, for example, Labour MP Annalise Dodds began to distance herself from support for trans rights. When asked if she agreed with a colleague that women could be born with penises, she gave this jumbled answer.
Well, no, I don't agree with her. Biological females obviously aren't. Of course, there are also trans women who've made a transition in their gender, but sex is not the same as gender.
Did this mealy-mouthed response put the matter to bed? No, of course not. The channel in question still clipped the interview for social media, and further headlines followed about the Labour Party being torn apart.
What they need to do, hear me out here, is decide whether or not trans identity is valid, and then answer in accordance with that decision. That's a good system. Oh yeah, true scum, exactly. Yeah. Like, I guess, like, the implication of what she was saying, Mrs. Annalise Dodds, is that, like, gender is separate from the question of whether somebody's a man or woman, which is a valid point. Like, somebody could say, if they liked, that their, you know, so-called trans women have a feminine gender, because perhaps they engage in feminine gender expression, but that's different from being female, and being a female is what makes you a woman. So yeah, if she was saying that, that's correct. So,
by the so-called trans debate. On one level then, the question, what is a woman, is simply being used as a means of securing a gotcha moment, in which, by pulling the right faces whilst their interviewee responds, a presenter can portray them as being either stupid, disingenuous, or out of touch. You can't get me with your big ideas about gender!
Matt Walsh's face is me after somebody angrily shouts in a West Country accent. I'm very confused here, because the media just went from being like privately educated, you know, Southeast elite types, being, you know, dismissive of the intellectual capacities of the general public, to then being some random, like, Bristolian farmer or something who's like, oh, these ideas are too big for me and my little brain. I'm too busy working on dealing with my sheep. I'm too busy trying to get my tractor working, so I can't. that went weird. It went like an American. Trying to get my tractor working, so I haven't got time to think about this gender malarkey. Is that good? Did I nail it? Cider drinker. See, whenever I try and do a rhotic accent, I accidentally turn non-rhotic words, or, you know, words that don't have an R, into having an R. Like idea, and then I'm like, oh wait, it doesn't have an R in it. But, you know, in my head, I'm just like, well, you know, it's a rhotic accent. Obviously, I just throw R's in all over the place. That's got to be how it is. It's not that we're not pronouncing R's. It's that they're just throwing them in. There's no R in, there's no R in the word R. It's how it is. Yes, Bristolian farmer. My nana, grandma, if you like, is from Bristol. And she described herself recently. She was like, I'm a proud Bristolian girl, me. And every single time she mentions her Bristolian heritage, I always want to ask her how she feels about the fact that the Edward Colston statue was torn down. But I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to ask her. But I do remember one time, like way back in, like, you know, before it was torn down, there was like a protest or something. It was like people complaining about like a street or something being named after Edward Colston, and she was like, "Urgh, what are they doing? What's all this rubbish?" So yeah, there we go. She doesn't even have that strong of a Bristolian accent, to be honest, like in reality. Anyway, but no, yeah, I mean, the point is, just to get back to reality, or there goes gravity, like, it's very confusing, because it's like, now Tom, like, if apparently it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you know, classist, elitist, that's the one I want. If it's elitist for the BBC to be like, well, I think some people might feel that they know what a woman is, that it doesn't cohere with your rambled, jarbled response or whatever. And if that's elitist, then what the hell is Tom affecting a regional accent in order to do an impression of a, you know, presumably member of the public being unable to understand a more kind of academic concept of gender? I don't know. Yeah.
For Matt Walsh, this is an attempt to discredit his political opponents. For British journalists, it is partly about trying to push the Labour Party to the right on social issues, but also about presenters wanting to generate some...
Is it about trying to push the Labour Party to the right on social issues? I don't know. Because then... I mean, I would say in general... I don't know. I feel like there is actually like an interesting intersection between like journalism and politics. Because what I was going to say is I feel like whatever side you're on, they're likely to try and push you the other way. So like, if you're Labour, like Labour are likely to be asked questions like, well, isn't immigration, doesn't it have negative economic implications? Or they're going to be asked like, aren't kids learning about homosexuality at school too early? Or they're going to be asked, should women have the right to vote? No, but you know, like they'll be asked like questions that are basically like, well, you're the left of centre party, so what are you? Blah 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 blah. But then you might say, well, hold on a minute. You know, are the Conservatives being like asked whether or not their objectionable beliefs are unreasonable? And I think the answer is not probably to the same extent. Like, I'm not one of those idiots who think like the media is like entirely biased one way or the other. In fact, I think in many ways it's kind of on various points biased in different directions. Like, I think definitely sometimes the media can be very biased in terms of like pushing for, you know, a kind of liberal, cosmopolitan, socially progressive viewpoint. But I also think sometimes it can be biased in maybe the opposite direction, you know, on some points as well. But so, you know, yeah, it annoys me like whenever people go like, you know, people are like, oh, the media's always totally got the backing of the left on every single issue, and you know, the media is going to make everybody look completely like, if you're just remotely anti-immigration or anything like that, the media is going to totally jump down your throat and call you racist and all that kind of stuff. Oh, that's not really true. But then the other people are like, oh, the media, they're basically just the vanguards of the Third Reich, and you know, they're going to if you're remotely progressive, or you believe that gay people should exist, then now call you a groomer or whatever. It's like, well, that's not really true either. So yeah, I don't really agree with that. But what I wanted to say is that I do think that Conservatives generally get grilled less by the media because they are far more shameless, and I was going to say they're not as morally principled. The thing is that their aspirations aren't as grand. Like, it's much easier it's kind of like making fun of the kid who wants to be cool. Like, no one wants to make fun of the kid who's content not being cool. Stephen Buffkin said, oh, this is kind of ironic. Stephen Buffkin says, you interact with the chat too much. Let me respond to that for 1,000,000 hours. No, I'm joking. But yeah, basically, I will go off this because I just wanted to say this real quick. What was I thinking? Yeah. People being irrational or whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so like, basically, like, you know, the Conservatives are likely to be the ones who are like, well, we can't take in as many immigrants. Whereas the Liberals are more likely to be like, no, we should take in more immigrants. And the thing is, one of those positions sounds slightly more idealistic. And I feel like the nature of that is people are going to kind of grill the idealistic side more, because it's kind of like with the idealistic side, you can just say, well, is that entirely reasonable? Whereas with the other side, it's kind of like, well, you know, they're not really aspiring to anything. So there's less of like an expectation. I don't know, like, does that make sense? But the other thing I want to say, like on the shameless point, like it's like how the conservatives, no, sorry, the Republicans refused to vote on Obama's Supreme Court nomination because like he was just about to leave, like it was an election year. And then many of them literally said, if there is a Supreme Court nomination up in the election year for the next president, we will vote, you know, we will refuse to vote on that too. And then obviously that happened. RBG died, Ruth Kander forever and all that. And then obviously they didn't do that. They completely like turned around and betrayed themselves. And it's like what can you say to that? Like that's the thing, like that level of just like shamelessness of like it's so obvious, like they were just completely manipulating the system and being like so cynical. And it's like how do you even, you know, attack people like that? Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, someone's pointing out that yeah, for Steven's benefit, I have done some more scripted stuff, and I'm going to do kind of like a scripted summary of this video for people. Yes. Sorry, I'm gassy. Anyway, I just want to check something real quick. All right. So sorry, and play.
Buzz about their respective shows on social media through taking advantage of the inherent virality of these clips. There is another, more important function that the...
I like that you taught us, Michael. It's like having a friend. Cute.
Question, what is a woman, serves in all these interviews, however. And that is the pseudo-philosophical veneer that such a focus on picking apart the meaning of words and concepts gives to the conversation. Suddenly, we're not just doing boring old politics anymore, we're doing metaphysics, baby! It just brings such a...
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's kind of weird that like journalists are even talking about this issue in a way, because it is a philosophical issue. I mean, like I get it, but it's kind of a funny thing in a way that like it is something that does get spoken about. I mean, I'm not complaining, but it would be interesting if, like, you know, one imagines, I don't know, if Athenian democracy was still alive and kicking, and like journalists would be being asked about like philosophical stuff, or like Plato's Republic, the philosopher kings would be being asked like, what is a woman? And then they'd, you know, do that whole, what is it, like the featherless biped thing, and someone rocks in with a plucked chicken.
A refined academic air to the proceedings. Matt Walsh really leans into this during the opening act of his...
Okay, Matt Walsh there sounded like Maush.
The proceedings. Matt Walsh really...
I mean, I know we don't pronounce T's all the time. I'm aware of that, but that's really funny.
Such a refined academic air to the proceedings. Matt Walsh...
Maush. That's such a funny Matt Walsh. One more time. Okay. I'm prepared.
To the proceedings. Matt Walsh really leans into this during the opening act of his film, and it leads to some incredible...
He looks like a psychopath there, like staring at like the little kids' party.
Incredible voiceover moments.
Truth is, I'm not very good at fishing. But what is truth? Is there a truth? Is this
powerful.
what progress looks like?
Absolutely.
Can my boys really become girls? Do I have 4 daughters?
You know what? This reminds me of so credit where it's due. I remember the ContraPoints video where like it's a parody of the Rubin Report, and it's like we ask the real questions, and it's like, can women do science? What is the moon made of? And like weird questions like that. It feels like very that was a nice voice crack, you loser. Like Tim and Eric. Like the whole you can't even, if you put the universe in a tube, you wouldn't want to put it in a tube.
Do I now have to pay for 4 weddings? Is there a son trapped in my daughter's body? If so, how do I get him out?
it's so Tim and Eric-y. Is there a son trapped in my daughter's body? What if the son was good at fishing, but my daughter wasn't? Would she sometimes be good at fishing? When she's good at fishing, does that mean the son's there? I don't know.
Are any of my kids who they claim to be? Who are these people? Who am I?
It's very funny.
Seriously, it would be impossible to write a sketch satirizing Matt Walsh because it would just be word for word this.
Yeah, it was comedic. Look at that face. I wish I could do that face. It's like, it's like, I don't know if I got it at all because I had to take my glasses off to achieve the effect. But like, yeah, it was obviously supposed to be comedic. I was thinking recently about like post irony, because and I don't know, like Matt Walsh is so old that it feels weird to attribute the idea of post irony to him. But like the example I was thinking of recently is that I've taken to using the phrase Zelensky's war of aggression. And it's like my new favorite phrase to use. I try and get it into as many conversations as possible. I'll be like, yeah, it's really expensive ever since Zelensky's war of aggression made the cost of living so high. Yeah, we've all got to like pay loads of money for our electricity bills because of Zelensky's war of aggression. And like the thing is, obviously, I'm not being serious. But then you'd be like, okay, so what like am I making fun of? Because okay, so like if you were a kind of pleb, you'd be like, oh, okay, so he's obviously like making fun of Putin, and like the pro-Russia lobby and like Russian assets. But it's like, well, I'm not really, because I don't really care. And then you realize, and I've made this point before, that the ultimate thing being made fun of with post-irony is the idea of sincerity itself, like the idea of even like talking seriously about the war. I always think I mentioned my other example of it is just adding the word allegedly onto like random like things that. Let's check what that is. Okay. My sister's hamster is poorly. Anyway, yeah. I just randomly adding the word like allegedly. I'll just be like, yeah, Rome fell in 470 AD, allegedly. I don't think it was that exact date. Today it's the start of November, so we have to start wearing poppies to commemorate the soldiers who died in World War One, allegedly. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's no like subject, and the point is, what I'm making is like, Matt Walsh is kind of like, I feel like that was almost like that kind of post-ironic, millennial humor on display right there, because it's like he's obviously not making fun of himself, but he's not really, I don't think he's really making fun of anything there. I think he is just being a little bit of a goofster, and I kind of respect that, because I don't think, but yeah, I think it's definitely very very lame of Tom Nicholas to be like, look at this guy. I mean, he's like a parody of himself, and it's like, well, it's like I want to see Tom Nicholas like react to Sam Hyde or somebody like that and be like, imagine making a parody of this guy. It'd be impossible. It's like, yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense.
A similar desire to want to feel like an intellectual no doubt also fuels presenters.
Rather wear a peace poppy just to wind people up, if nothing. Yeah, I kind of want to wear one because I've recently got really into like I've become increasingly enthused by observances, like kind of annual observances, and I'm like, oh yeah, wear a poppy, can't argue that. It's just like a fun thing to do. It's like, yeah, sure, I like to eat hot cross buns approaching Easter. I like to watch a horror movie on the 31st of October. Oh, I didn't get to do my joke. I do it every single time. So let me say it now, and pretend I'm introducing the video. Hello, everybody. I hope you had a fun. No, sorry. Wait, see, this is why usually I would do it in my edited videos. Imagine I just started the video. Hello, everybody. I hope you had a spooky Reformation Day. That's my little inside joke I have with you guys. Because anytime I do a video for Halloween, I always do that specific thing of being like spooky and then say Reformation Day, because I find it funny that that Reformation Day is when Halloween is. How old is he? Okay, Google. How old is Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh is 36. I don't know about Yix, but I think he's 36. Okay. Interesting.
Like Stig Abel and Nick Ferrari and Andrew Marr, all of whom get a chance.
Also, actually, the funny thing is, there's this British commentator who, ironically enough, was being interviewed by that guy on the screen right now. But to clarify, I'm not talking about that guy on the screen right now, because what I'm about to say next is that the guy I'm talking about is 36. But yeah, he looks even older. Like, there's this guy, British commentator in the UK, who's like 36. I kind of want to remember his name. Oh crap! What is it? I'm gonna find it out the hard way. Okay, Google. Who is the specific commentator I'm thinking of who's 36? Okay, it's not Tupac Shakur. It is Harry Cole. Okay, everybody. Actually, wait. I know how to do this. I'm gonna show you a picture of this guy. He looks kind of young there. Harry Cole. Like, I want like a really recent one, because I don't want to show you one from a while ago. I mean, fine, we'll go for this one. So copy link address. New browser. They don't want music. Don't know how to use it. They don't want. Okay. Well, that didn't work very well. Oh, is this because it's a stock photo? Okay, let's try and find a. I just wanted one of him, like, just to really get across how old he looks. And that was like, it was such a good one. I mean, I suppose. See, the thing is, he looks younger in this one, but fine, I'll show you it. I'll show you this one, but just mentally age him up a bit more than this. Okay, how do I do this? They don't want music. Okay, you know what? I think I'm an idiot. I think I'm an idiot of a tiny brain. Oy vey. Oy vey, everybody. I swear things have got harder. Okay, this is what we want. This is going to fix it. This is going to fix everything, guys. There we go, finally. Anyways, 36. Oi, oi there. My name's... What's he called? Harry Cole? Yeah, yeah. Oi, there. My name's Harry Cole. Nice to meet you. I was wondering if you would like to come to my 37th birthday party. It's going to be a right lark. Something like that. He's also a conservative. Maybe he is. I could see him being trans. Okay. Oh crap, I deleted the wrong thing. Wait, did I? Yes. Okay, yeah, boom. Alright.
To roleplay as Plato for 5 minutes. But...
Uh-oh. Where's... Guys, what happened to our... We've like totally... I've ruined everything, guys. I can't make the video appear. Let's Oh wait, okay, wait. Okay. Oh, that didn't work. Why is it not working? Where are you? Oh, there we go. Well, that was a big surprise.
The most important effect...
Isn't it crazy that we had a candidate for Prime Minister called Tom Tug on that?
...of this philosophical gesturing is the manner in which it allows everyone involved in these debates to pretend that this conversation...
David Lammy seems... I think he's kind of cool. Mostly because every now and then he'll say something really incendiary, which I really enjoy. Or just come out and be like, you know, I really do think that, I don't know, this is probably not what his voice sounds like, but I'm giving him this voice now. You know, I really do think that the Conservatives might be possessed by demons. And now just duck out. Everyone gets really mad, comes back.
Is primarily about abstract ideas. We're just discussing definitions here, guys. When...
Well, yeah, they are.
In reality, that's far from the case. See, as is evident in the trajectory of Matt Walsh's documentary, the question, what is a woman, is really just a stand-in for, do you think trans people exist?
Well, no, not exactly, but kind of. But what's the problem with that?
Which is itself a stand-in for more practical questions.
Someone made fun of my hair for being greasy. I feel like, you know, that's kind of racist, because for all they know, I could have some Southern European heritage. Like, I shower every day. You know, I'm sorry if my hair's greasy, but you know, to be sure, definitely, if I go more than a day without showering, it does get pretty greasy. Maybe I've got some Italian in me, who knows? But yeah, they were like, oi, you greasy haired loser. Have you tried wearing? Have you tried using some shampoo? I was very offended, but I didn't let it get to me.
About what rights should be extended to trans people. For, do you think trans people exist?
That's true, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Which is itself a stand-in for more practical questions about what rights should be extended to trans people, what healthcare they should have access to, and whether they should be able to live free from harassment.
Well, I mean, look, the thing is, we can talk about all of that as an issue, but like, it's, you know, like ultimately, I would say it's more like a question of, do trans people exist? And then there's a follow-up question, which is, once we then say, well, you know, depending on how you define trans people, no, or at least if they do exist, then the question would be, are their claims about reality accurate? And then the answer would be no. And then we could say, well, given that, should, what do we do then? Should we all pretend that they're correct and have like a law that says officially they are correct, even though we all admit they're not? Should it be illegal to tell them that they're wrong? Like those are kind of questions, but like, and they're related questions, but they're not the question.
Well, the motivations.
Every other day for shampoo. Well, I did watch a video recently by some guy who was saying he never uses shampoo. The only thing I heard about him is like apparently he's like a neoliberal shill. He's cool, like some guy.
Maybe slightly less clear. This is equally true of the interviews that we've been looking at from the British media. Journalists don't make a habit out of asking high-ranking politicians abstract.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like I don't think there's any consciousness to it. Like I don't really think that journalists are like thinking, well, Keir Starmer's answer to what could be a woman could extend to like a massive whole thing of like legislation in terms of how we treat the idea of trans identity. I don't really think they're thinking that deep into it.
Philosophical questions for no reason. The motivation for doing so here then is because they believe that
Johnny Harris, correctamundo.
The definition of womanhood that these interviewees provide will be indicative of how they might vote on legislation relating to trans rights. The question, what is a woman, is thus a way to push politicians to commit to supporting or opposing trans rights without, coming across as too divisive. Of course, there are elements of the British media that are more than happy to engage in very direct, open fear-mongering about trans.
What you mean, you plonker, when you say elements of the British media, is you're referring to the fact that for some reason in the UK, newspapers don't have any expectation to be impartial, whereas almost all other forms of media does. I say almost all other forms, to be honest, actually. It's TV and radio, you have to be impartial, but for newspapers, you don't. So that's the reason. So he's saying, like, what do you say? He said, like, some parts of the media or something like that? Or, like, wait, what was the exact word he used?
And happy to engage. Of course, there are elements of the British media that are more than happy to engage in very...
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, like, it's not really elements of the British media. It's there's certain forms of British media where people are allowed to express their opinions. In the TV, journalists can't express their opinions. On the radio, journalists can't express their opinions. But in print journalism, they can express their opinions. It's a very weird rule. There's no reason for it, but it is a thing. So there we go. That's why in papers you're likely to see more bias.
Direct, open fear-mongering about trans people.
Wait, hold a minute. It says income taxes to rise by 21 billion despite budget. Is that what it says, budget? Yeah. What does that have to do with trans people? Rapidly advancing Ukraine could retake Crimea, says US. That's cope. But what's that got to do with trans people?
However, that kind of journalism only really works among a certain crowd. More mainstream audiences will often be turned off by rhetoric.
Banks warn of house price slump. Those damn trans people.
Which comes across as too outwardly hateful.
Wait, hold on. Putin rallies against satanic something.
The team which produced What is a Woman seems very aware of this. There's a reason that the first 25 minutes of the film seem so mild for something produced by the Daily Wire. It needs that time to set Walsh up as a reasonable, respectable journalist. To anyone who's only coming across his work for the first time, this functions to present the hate, which so clearly fuels his later stunts, as the outcome of...
Hate? What hate? I don't even know. Like, I mean, like, I'm obviously not a fan of Matt Walsh, but even now, I don't know if he's like a hateful guy. I mean, he seems... I genuinely, I I feel like Ben Shapiro seems kind of hateful. He seems very angry. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any hate with Matt Walsh.
Of the conversations these had during the making of this film, rather than a textbook case of a right-wing fear of the other. This isn't to say that I necessarily think that any of these journalists are likely to be giving speeches at TERF rallies anytime soon, but it's clear that each of them and their producers.
Yeah, okay, so like there's like a few issues. Like there are so many like things being left just totally like unaddressed. Like obviously one of them being like the idea that challenging trans identity is hateful, which of course it isn't. It's just you've made a claim about reality. Could you back that up? Where are those TERF rallies at? Asking for a friend. Yeah. To be fair, I often do like a lot of the TERF rallies aren't on my like radar until they happen. Not to say that I've ever really considered going to one, but I do sometimes think to myself like, I'll see people going to them. I go, oh, maybe I should go to one of these rallies, which I guess is a way of saying that I have seriously considered going to one. But then like at the same time, I'm also a very lazy person who's like resistant to the idea of having to do something like get a train to go to a big city, to probably get a bus or something to get to a place and then hang out there for like the whole day. So I kind of use the fact that I generally don't find out about these rallies or like gatherings until it's too late to do anything about them as a convenient excuse. You've never been to a TERF rally? No. Yeah, I haven't. Like I've been aware of them. They just all they'd have to do, it's the only thing I ask, is do one in my town where I live. Soon to be a city. That will give us away some information. But no, yeah. Do that. Anyway. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, and the other thing is what was I saying? Okay. The other thing is like the whole thing about like it being in some way disingenuous for Matt Walsh to start off his documentary from a neutral standpoint when it just so obviously isn't. Like it's really very reasonable for somebody to do that.
Producers feel some level of professional jealousy when they see the attention which inflammatory articles about the so-called trans debate attract. This pseudo-philosophical language thus provides an opportunity in the form of a level of plausible deniability.
I've been to several TERF rallies, but I'm lucky that I live in London. Yeah, living in London's easy.
They're able to participate in this controversial debate, or sometimes not even mentioning trans people by name at all. Most British journalists would thus like to think that there is an ocean between themselves and Matt Walsh. Okay, obviously there is a literal ocean between them most of the time, but I mean a metaphorical one as well. Journalists such as those that we've
metaphors
looked at in this video would perhaps stress that their reporting lacks.
Okay, here's the thing. Everyone keeps saying MW to mean Matt Walsh, but because I'm used to seeing TW to mean trans woman, whenever I see MW, I keep reading it as man woman. So I'm like, and man woman's take on abuse. That's really funny to me. Man woman. But no, yeah, like man woman definitely has some pretty objectionable views.
The kind of open hostility towards trans people that defines the output of institutions like the Daily Wire. Yet, just as that more timid opening act of What is a Woman works to legitimize the more openly hateful sequences
hateful,
so too have these pseudo-intellectual conversations about definitions of womanhood allowed more extreme transphobic formations to emerge into the mainstream. And perhaps those more recent developments provide a means of drawing this video to a close. While the death of old Lizzie has been soaking up the majority of press attention over recent weeks, at time of recording,
Do I just not know who he is because I'm American? Are you talking about Tom Nicholas? Because no, he's oh yeah. For how long is Tom gonna nag on the format of the doc? Like, yeah, he is so annoyed by it, and it's really funny because it's just like it's not a big deal. Anyway, um, no, yeah, this guy ain't famous. I mean, he's basically like B-list left tuber, maybe C-list. Um,
Britain's transphobic moral panic continues on in earnest. Shortly after I started working on this video, Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister of the UK.
oh my god, wait. So are we gonna get like a really outdated reference to Liz Truss?
This meant that his colleagues in the Conservative Party had to elect a new leader. And as a direct result of seeing the anguish that the so-called trans debate appears to cause the Labour Party, candidates for the position jostled with one another to present themselves as the most opposed to trans rights. Announcing her bid for the party leadership, Suella Braverman gave this moving speech.
We need to get rid of all of this woke rubbish and actually get back to a country where describing a man and a woman in terms of biology does not mean that you're going to lose your job.
Rishi Sunak similarly launched his campaign with a manifesto for women's rights. In truth,
how dare he? Of course, he's the one in charge now. Hey, although I have heard like so he's the subject of the video that is. Wait a minute, did I remember to pin that? Fudge, I forgot to pin it. There we go. So, of course, he is the subject of the recent video I did for the main channel, which everybody should check out. It's only 4 minutes long. If you haven't clicked on it yet, you should click on it now. I should have had it pinned the whole time so that anybody who stopped by could have checked it out, but whatever, it's fine. Yeah. But basically, yeah, he's in charge now, and he's elevated a lot of kind of pro-gender critical people to positions of power. But then he also has elevated a anti-abortion person. But having said that, I still am strongly of the position that being anti-abortion is very... It's unlikely to get very far in the UK. The woman that he has... So she's been put into position of like Minister for Women. But she's from Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is kind of crazy. So it's kind of like, I guess the analogy I could make is it would be like if like Joe Biden got somebody from like the Alabama Democrats and put them in a position of power, and it turned out that that person had voted, like had a really conservative voting record. And you'd be like, okay, that's not great. But actually, considering she's from Alabama, it's not really so surprising that she's got conservative, you know, she's voted conservative in the past and doesn't necessarily speak to how she will act as a member of kind of the federal government. And it's kind of the same thing here. Northern Ireland is like our Alabama, so it's not too scared to be. It should be pinned. A link to it should be pinned. If you just should say new video for main channel, and if you click on it, I didn't know Rishi is Indian. What else is he? He is a man. Did anyone clock Joe Biden called him Rashid Sunak? Oh, Joe. But yeah, basically, yeah, the point is, like, I feel like so far he seems like he could be fine. Actually, one thing that I forgot to include in that video, well, I didn't forget to include it. I excluded it because the video was running too long already. And I will admit that those are supposed to be short videos for my channel, but each one, so I've done 3 so far, and each one has been longer than the previous one. So I really need to make sure that my next video I do that's supposed to be short is shorter. Otherwise, it's just gonna, spiral out of control. But even then, I didn't include everything I wanted to include because I wanted to go on a whole thing about how, like, I feel like he could genuinely, like, I feel like Mr. Rishi Sunak could genuinely pull off a win for the Conservatives in 2024. Like, I don't think it's unreasonable that that could happen, which is hilarious. Just because, I mean, okay, I've said it before. I think it would be so funny if Labour still lose. Wait.
Little more than a transphobic dog whistle. Another candidate, Penny Mordaunt, had previously been seen as a rare trans ally within the Conservative Party.
Trans men are men, trans women are women.
On putting herself forward for leader, however, she span like a fidget spinner, posting a Twitter thread about how trans women are not biological women and highlighting her record of fighting trans orthodoxy. Last, but by very no means least, we have Kemi Badenoch, who tried to grab headlines by banning
I felt like he said her name wrong.
gender-neutral toilets from the venue where she hosted her campaign launch. The problem being that the toilets in question were just two self-contained cubicles, so aides had to stick sad, handwritten notes reading men and ladies to the doors. Which I feel the need to say, if you're going to do gendered anything, it's clearly men and women or ladies and gentlemen. It's not men and ladies. If you're gonna swing around the...
Well, really, it's ladies and gents. No one's gonna write gentlemen. Yeah, people are agreeing Tories will win. Yeah. I think you've also got to consider the other possibility, which is that I start my own political party and totally storm into power off the enthusiasm, the raw, heretofore untapped enthusiasm of my subscriber base. You know, because I really feel like I could run away with it.
The gender binary like it's a flipping hammer, then at least get your labels right. I don't think it is an overstatement at all to say that this bout of competitive transphobia by potential prime ministers was provoked almost entirely by the sequence of interviews that we've looked at in this video. Whatever claims they might make about being apolitical, whatever defences they might invoke about how they were just asking questions, these journalists' promotion of the idea that questioning the existence of trans people is a legitimate, even intelligent pursuit has very real consequences.
Okay, but are they wrong? This is literally, it's called the appealed consequence, right? Like you're saying, it has consequences to suggest that it's legitimate to question trans identity. It's like, okay, yeah, but is it wrong to question trans identity? You didn't answer that one, did you? You just said that it has consequences. Also, like, this whole thing does feel like Baby's first critique of British journalism, because it's like, yeah, British journalism does have a habit of being kind of what's the word, like self-referential in a way where if something becomes an issue, it then becomes an issue. Like I remember when Jeremy Corbyn was running in 2017, like I swear, like one guy like asked, would you be willing to like nuke Korea or something like that? And then, you know, North Korea. And then, you know, Jeremy Corbyn was like, no. And then people were like, so you let them invade us? You let Kim Jong-un's son Il Jong come and invade us and make us all eat dogs or eat all our dogs, and you wouldn't even have the guts to nuke him? I know I'm doing a Tom Nicholas here by affecting a regional accent to do an impression of a member of the public, but that's fine because I own it. That's what I do. In my world, every member of the public has a regional accent. But basically, anyway, what happened is then, like, it became a thing where, like, because, like, he responded uncomfortably to it, like, it was then like, well, everyone's like, well, I guess that's the question we need to be asking him. And that's how it works. That's just how it is. Like, once something becomes, like, a question, a lot of the time, it just becomes, like, it snowballs. And it's like, then someone asks, and the next thing you know, a journalist's like, well, this is the question everyone's been asking. So it's like a very legitimate point about British journalism that this is the thing. But then having said that, like, what's the alternative? Like it's kind of like obviously that's what journalism is going to be. Which again, like I say, it's a criticism of journalism, but it's not really. It's more like a criticism of society, and by extension, a criticism of human nature itself. Like, yeah, we're kind of like social beings, and if we see like what if we see something being done, that's likely to have an effect on how other people conduct themselves. Um, and like, and then there's the thing where like if something becomes established, like as a particular question to ask or whatever else, then people are like, oh yeah, I'll keep doing that, and then it becomes more established, and then yeah, so on and so forth.
It doesn't matter whether or not their intentions might be different from those of Matt Walsh, the results are surprisingly similar. But this pseudo-philosophical riddle me this genre of debate is not only dangerous as a gateway to more openly hostile
KC, what do you think about David Cameron's and Tony Blair's campaign and policy way back when/then? I don't really care. I mean, I guess they were both successful, so well done to them. But I don't really think I mean, obviously they were both kind of boring. Tony Blair seems to have had some successes, but then was evil. David Cameron, his policies were terrible. Austerity didn't work. It was a bad idea. He kept saying he was gonna reduce the deficit to zero, and kept failing. He'd be like, "Well, maybe if I invest less in the economy and cut taxes more, then the economy will get better." And then I was like, "Oh no, the economy's getting worse. I mean, blah blah blah." And then obviously he completely ruined everything with Brexit. And I don't even I'm not even anti-Brexit exactly. I'm just saying that he specifically ruined it in terms of how he handled it. He didn't handle it very well, let's say. And I think I don't think it's controversial to say that regardless of your opinion on Brexit, I think we can all agree that it's not going well. I did see a thing recently actually where it was on Twitter, and there's lots of right-wing people. Like if you go onto any politicians Twitter page, almost all of the replies seem to be right-wing conservative takes, which is weird because you would think Twitter overall seems kind of more left-wing, but if you just go onto Joe Biden's Twitter page and just click on anything, it'll be all the comments are "Let's go, Brandon." But yeah, basically someone was saying well, we need Boris Johnson back, and then someone's like, well, why? And then the thing he said is oh, we need to get Brexit done, and then the person replying was Brexit's happened. This is Brexit. And I feel it's one of those hilarious things where in the eyes of many conservatives in the UK, Brexit it doesn't even mean anything. It's just and I mean, obviously on my channel we can definitely talk about words not meaning anything. It's just become some kind of weird, meaningless archetype to refer to some vague idea of the UK being better. When people say get Brexit done, they don't even mean get Brexit done. They don't even mean leave the EU, because we've already done that. What they mean is make the UK great again. And yeah, because obviously we've already left the EU. There's no more Brexiting that can be done. But there is well, how do we get to the point where all of the things that I thought that would happen with Brexit happen? Yeah. So yeah. But I mean, it's kind of I mean, I was gonna say I feel it must also apply to Donald Trump, but I don't know if it necessarily does, because I feel with Donald Trump, most of what they say, I mean, I know I've already mentioned "Make America Great Again," but obviously, I mean, that is an inherently nebulous thing. I'm trying to think of something that maybe they say that's a specific policy that they've taken to mean something else. I don't think they really do that. Because obviously, I mean, they had build the wall, and I feel like it's true that the wall wasn't really built, um, but I don't think they use it in like a figurative sense. So I'll say that at least compliment to the American conservatives. I will say that I think they at least tend to use figurative, unclear language, like vague language when they're talking about vague policy goals, and clear, specific language when they're talking about clear, specific goals. Um, but yeah, I feel like for the British, yeah, like our thing is get Brexit done, which is a very clear policy goal. Leave the EU. That's like very much a kind of when we've done it thing. But it's definitely being used to mean like no, get 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 the minds open again. I don't know. There's some like hypothetical time. I don't really know what like the UK being great would actually amount to. I feel like it would probably involve like more manufacturing. Probably fewer people. Like fewer people studying, going to uni, something like that. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I just imagine like I feel like when people say like it's like get Brexit done. I feel like what they imagine is a bunch of like British men, good old fashioned British men, working at the steel works in Blackburn, and then they get finished, and they go have a go have a beer at the local pub, real ale, none of that European lager rubbish, and then they go and have a kickabout at the local field. That's it. And then they'll be doing it, and they'll be like, they score a goal, and then they cry and they say, "Finally, Brexit is done." That's it. That's British conservatism.
Transphobic.
Carling, that most British of Canadian lagers. Wait, is Carling Canadian? I had a girlfriend who was northern. She was from Sheffield, and she had a dad, and he drank Carling. So I thought, well, if a northerner's going to drink it, surely it's British. Northerners don't have. I knew a guy who was also from Sheffield area, from Barnsley, and yeah, I knew him at uni. He'd never eaten rice or pasta before. The only carbs he'd ever eaten were potatoes and bread. And I was like, that is the most northern thing I could ever imagine. He's like, why do I need that foreign muck? Rice, we don't need that here. Just give me some potatoes. So yeah.
Big politics. It is troubling enough in and of itself, for it is inherently dehumanizing. This whole charade about definitions of womanhood denies
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I am aware of the hilariousness that potatoes aren't British. Yet they do feel so British. Like, it's kind of shocking to think that like, let's say you went back to back when Britain was great in the 1300s, and you made them like a classic meal. You made them like a jacket potato with some baked beans and cheese, and they'd be like, "What is this exotic meal you've made here? What is this?" Like they'd like eat the potato. It would be the most incredible thing in the world. Oh, this fruit of ancient India. I don't know. I assume that in the Middle Ages they thought like their conception, which by the way I've heard before, that like Columbus didn't actually think that he'd gone to India, but rather just in European times, India was like their kind of catch-all term for foreign lands. So like which is kind of like, I feel like it's like how the reason why Turkey is called Turkey, even though it comes from America, is because similarly, like Turkey was like associated with the Orient. So it was like, again, like Turkey came to be associated with, if somewhere came from like a foreign land, it was Turkish. Which like that's definitely a thing. So yeah, there we go. That's my defense of Columbus. I feel like the actual reason they called it India is more so, but I say it's a defense. And I say I feel like I heard this. I heard that like they use the word India, and like that's why they called the Native Americans Indians, because it's like, well, they're from a foreign land, um, which makes sense. Um, Someone said only poor people ate veg. That's something I was thinking about recently, because I was thinking to myself like, nowadays we eat veg so that like we can not be so fat, right? Because like veg allows you to get substance into your body without like getting too many calories. But in the past, obviously, people's priority wasn't keeping their body beach ready and rock steady. Their priority was not starving to death. And I was thinking to myself, like, who on earth would grow like celery? Like, in a way, it's kind of a miracle that celery even exists. Because I want to know who the hell was cultivating celery. Like, because if you're like a farmer in like the ancient days, that's like back-breaking labor. So difficult. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't, shock horror here. Me, the guy who sits in my comfortable indoor, room on my chair, watching stuff and talking about it, but often not even talking about it, find the idea of instead working for like an entire waking day, which probably starts super early in the morning, growing stuff in the dirt, kind of unappealing. And I can't imagine going through all of that to then be like, yep, I got some celery, guys. Yeah, it's going to be, and I'm sure like it's literally, it's got like no calories in it. No, well, okay, it's got some flavor, but like whatever. So I'm like thinking like, who was like growing veg? And then I thought to myself, like, you would almost think that vegetables must have been thought of as kind of a luxury, because again, like, apart from, I know there are vegetables, like, I know potatoes are vegetables. I'm talking about like like proper vegetables, like green vegetables. Because like, yeah, farming was so much work. So who the hell would have been like yeah, like who the hell would have done something to make something so like absent nutrition? And like, I think it's definitely true that in the past they would have eaten like obviously way more carbs, way more protein, way more fat, probably beans as well. But like they and like relatively no veg. But the thing is, I mean, obviously you think, well, they must have eaten veg, because if they didn't eat any veg, we wouldn't have any veg now. Like, someone had to be cultivating Brussels sprouts all those years so that we can have them now. And the only logical conclusion is that they must have liked Brussels sprouts. And moreover, they must have liked Brussels sprouts so much that even though it would have been tremendous back-breaking labor that someone had to do with like a kind of plow and like a couple of oxen or something on the regular to produce something that would have had very little caloric value at all, they still did it. And it's like, wow, they must have really liked Brussels sprouts. They must have really liked celery, because they weren't doing it for the calories. They weren't doing it so that they could like keep fed and, satiated during the cold, lean months. You can grow veg in patches, not just fields, like grain, lol. Okay, well, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So people are saying like you're vitamin deficient. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. It's just crazy. I was thinking about like see, what I find interesting is like loads of people who talk about like what like there's that channel on YouTube, Townsend's and Sons or something like that, where they do like 18th century cooking. That's all well and good. But here's what I always think about, like, I feel like there's an underappreciated thing of like, what the hell were they eating in like the Bronze Age? I feel like it's a really slept on period. Because like I feel like with cavemen, everyone's like, okay, yeah, fine, they'd kill a mammoth and just roast it on a stick, and it's like, okay, we're all clear on that. And then it's like, okay, you get to the Middle Ages, and it's like, all right, they just ate butter and meat, and cooked it in a pie, and that kind of stuff. They didn't have potatoes. They must have eaten. They must have eaten. It's just ate, isn't it? They must have. That doesn't sound right. Eaten. Oh my lord. They must have eaten so many pies. Dumplings, I guess. Yeah, but like that's that. But then I'm like thinking to myself, like, what did they have when they were like what were like I think about the Bible a lot, because in the Bible, you know, it describes the Passover, and it's like basically you cook a lamb and then you make some flatbread. And now in my head, all I can think to myself is that all they were eating the whole time in like the kind of Bronze Age and like I guess early Iron Age was just flatbread and lamb. Like basically the whole of human civilization was being sustained entirely off of kebabs, like doner kebabs. It was mostly cereals in the Bronze Age, dawn of farming. Okay. Like rice? No. Did they have rice? What do they eat in the desert? Because okay, see, this is what got me thinking about like vegetables. Because I was like thinking like in the desert, they couldn't have. And I know like it wasn't like, but like let's say again, you know, the Bible's my frame of reference here. Let's say you're you know, whoever, David, Abraham, anyone. It doesn't matter. Let's say you're just some dude, a real Boaz, just hanging out in ancient Canaan. And like, what are you eating? Because okay, like fine, you've got grain, so I guess you make flatbread. And then lamb. They ate so much lamb, like it was just lamb all day, right? And but like yeah, like the veg, like what do they have in there? I don't know. That's interesting to me. Fish, that's a good point, but no shellfish. We know that. Which also like, isn't that weird? Like, it's already like I'm sat there like, wow, they must have had a really restrictive diet because you know, they couldn't really grow veg, I'm assuming, like in the desert. Like I can't really, I don't know. When I think the desert, I don't think like massive broccoli trees springing out with, you know, you can pluck fresh sprigs of broccoli from. So, but yeah, so I don't imagine like, you know, I feel like it would have just been they had lamb and they had wheat and that was enough. But apparently, yeah, God comes along. Nope, you got to be even more restrictive.
Trans people.
Okay, that's
their humanity.
Well, it's not about humanity. Look, they're making a claim that's either true or false. If somebody says, look, if I say I'm a woman, then I either am or I'm not. And you might say, well, no one's allowed to answer that. But then the question is, okay, so what if I say, like, I am a professional footballer? Well, I either am or I aren't. There's no, like, and there's actually a pretty legitimate case to be made that I am, in fact, not a professional footballer. So, like, that's the issue. Like, the problem is, like, I feel like on some level, everybody agrees that when somebody makes a claim about themselves, they're making a claim that can be disputed. So you would have to argue that it is in some way uniquely, like, objectionable to question the claim for whether somebody's a woman or a man. But it's like, well, why should it be? Yeah, I am a billionaire. Aha, that's funny. You made that footballer anecdote last time. Okay. You know why? It's because I've had for a while like an idea in my head for like a video that's going to be like refuting trans identity. And the thing I wanted to start off with is an analogy. I'll give a spoiler here. It's an analogy involving the professional footballer Danny Welbeck and the actor Danny DeVito. And it's going to be like, you know, like what it would start off with in my head to kind of like make the point would be like, here are two Dannys. And it was like Danny DeVito and Danny Welbeck. And it would be like, so I'd start off with like Danny Welbeck. And I'd be like, Danny Welbeck is British, he's black, he's, you know, 6 foot something, he's a professional footballer, and, you know, that would be it, whatever, you know, something like that. And then I'd be like, and this is Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito is also British, he's black, he's 6 foot something. I don't know actually, how tall is Danny Welbeck? Let's find out. Okay, Google, how tall is Danny Welbeck? Oh, meters, metre. Oh god, what's that mean? What's that in a normal? In feet. That's what I'm about. 6'1". Call it. Really? 1.85 meters. Oh. Anyway. So yeah. Here's Danny DeVito. He's black. He's British. He's 6'1", and he's a professional footballer. And then somebody would say, you know, the person watching this would then be thinking, well, that seems not accurate. And then I'd be like, now there's a difference between these two people. When Danny Welbeck says that he's British, he's black, he's 6'1", and he's a professional footballer, he's saying all of those things because those things describe actual material realities about him. Whereas when Danny DeVito says that he's English, he's black, he's 6'1", and he's a professional footballer, he's saying all of those things because he identifies as those things. And then it was going to like jump into like, you know, pointing out that it's only meaningful if it's describing an actual reality. And then it was going to say, now the question is, what about a biological male who says they're a woman? Are they somebody like Danny Welbeck who's describing the actual reality of the situation, or are they more of a Danny DeVito identifying as something that they are not? I thought Danny DeVito was a Pikachu who solves mysteries. Does he play? I didn't know that. I do know that he's the what's the word I'm looking for? The like I was gonna say gremlin. It's not that. He's a satyr in Hercules.
Hopes, fears, frustrations, and aspirations of actual living, breathing trans people are hidden from view, and this already marginalized community is instead transformed into
I'm the trash man. I go out and I throw trash all over the ring, and I start eating garbage.
A philosophical provocation, a linguistic complication.
Did he say linguistic? Let's see if he said linguistic.
Formed into a philosophical provocation, a linguistic.
He definitely said linguistic. I feel like that's like something like a rapper would say, you know, like one of those rap singers they have. They'd be like, I'm a linguist.
Transformed into a philosophical provocation, a linguistic complication. Such a mode of debate obviously makes it much easier for bigotry to grow.
Bigotry.
Because it conceals any traces of character and personality and experience that cis people watching these debates might connect with. All of this will no doubt be...
I mean, look, the reality is, of course, that a trans person having all the nicest personality and all that kind of stuff, and all that, it's neither here nor there when it comes to them being right or wrong.
more than obvious to any trans people watching. Others will also likely have noticed the manner in which these debates mirror those surrounding other marginalised groups. For any cis people watching...
Is that really true? Because, like, most other marginalised groups, there's not, like, a central question about reality. Like, I can't really think of, like, there's no equivalent question to, like, do women have a penis that works for, like, gay people or, you know, whoever else?
However, I think whenever we find ourselves drawn into these kinds of
Oh
discussions,
yeah, that's we got the two the two terms which are Mausch and linguistic. It does remind me, of course, of our favorite. How did this make it through the edit? Kaylin Conrad's Fred propaganda, and they're just being Fred propaganda.
it's important not only to make it clear that trans people and lives and rights are not up for debate, but also to re-inject that sense of humanity back into the conversation. Because that sense of shared humanity is the foundation on which real solidarity is built.
Okay, just a slight point here. He's like, humanity, blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, Matt Walsh, hate, filled with hatred. And it's like, okay, it's kind of, I've made this point before. It was one of my more recent kind of, non-live stream videos on this channel, which was, of course, the thing about, like, they're like, TRAs are like hypocrites. Like, they'll be like, oh, you've got to understand trans people as people. You've got to understand them as their own unique individuals with all of their own experiences and all that kind of stuff. And you totally shouldn't dehumanize them or view them as some kind of meaningless or like emotionless or whatever massive opposition and all that kind of stuff. And then it's like you look at how they view and describe gender critical people, and it's everything that they're saying we should not do when talking about trans-identified people. They'll be like, gender critical people are an evil mob of bigots who hate trans-identified people, and sometimes they try to conceal their hate, but you can see it because it just seeps out because they're so full of it. Kellen Conrad, of course, famously said, hate is what motivates us. I think also then says, like, it's our reason for living. I'm pretty sure Kaylin says that. Like, our reason for living is hate. And again, like, obviously it's wild because if a gender critical person said that about TRAs, they would be considered the most, like, brainwashed, kind of rabid, ridiculous, over the top bigot ever. But if a TRA says about gender critical people, it's like, yes, very well informed. Oh wow, you must have done so much research. Blah blah blah. It's ridiculous.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it has been worthy of your time.
No comment.
If you think that others might get something out of these thoughts as well, then I would love it if you'd consider sharing the video on social media or wherever else. It really does make all the difference.
What would be a good alternative to social media? I don't know if it's possible to share videos in places other than social media, I can't really, like, I would just what I would do is, like, print it out in binary and just I don't know, like Morse code. How about that? Oh. Somebody's mentioning Jesse Gender's video responding to Matt Walsh. But yeah, all right, everybody. I think we're probably done for the day because we've been recording for over 2 hours. Happy November. I hope we're all excited for the 5th of November. I actually personally, for my part, consider today to be Reformation Day, just because I don't like how the standard 31st of October does tread on the toes of Halloween. So I guess based on that, I can say Happy Reformation Day, or Happy All Saints Day, or alternatively, All Hallows Day, if we want to make the etymology of Halloween more obvious. But yeah, it was nice for you to have come here, to be here while I spoke about stuff. See you later. Bye. Samhain. Yeah, people do call it that, don't they? Crazy people.